Welcome to episode 464 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Grace Winburn,
Michael O'Malley,
and Andrew Swafford.
In today's episode, we're going to be talking about movies that we saw this week in part one. And in part two, we're going to conclude our 2-episode Patreon pick series with a pick from our Patreon supporter, Candace Sisson, which is 2005's Pride and Prejudice.
Good pick.
Yeah, like we'll
Wonderful.
figure out who's who in that one.
Thank you.
Who's Pride, who's Prejudice, let's get to the bottom of that in this episode. Don't turn away. Don't click that dial. Stay on this episode.
It's Lizzie Bennett. She's both.
No,
Ooh, that's a
which are
that's
we?
a twist. Yeah.
Are you
Yeah.
Pride or are you Prejudice?
Yeah, we're gonna go like and look inward to ourselves and find out who's Pride and who's Prejudice.
Self-knowledge, that's one of the themes of the novel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that and
So.
them ladies be thirsty,
Gold digging too.
All right. Well, let's speaking of none of that, let's transition over to a movie that we saw this week, and that is we talked about it. Andrew and I talked about it out of TIFF, but it is now in theaters. It was the #1 movie at the box office last week. The first
Yeah,
week it was there.
really.
Yeah.
What
which
an
is crazy.
interesting offbeat movie to be #1 at the box office.
Yeah, but the latest and possibly last, but probably not last, knowing Hayao Miyazaki.
He's pretty old.
I
don't know.
I don't know. He's
I
still
believe-
got blocks to do.
Yeah.
That's true. He's sitting there. Well,
His
maybe
son
he's
ain't
gonna
doing
give
shit.
Goro the blocks. These ones aren't made of gravestones, buddy.
I think Goro already denied the blocks.
Yeah, I don't think Gord's getting those blocks. Anyway, Boy and the Heron. The Boy and the Heron, the latest from Hayao Miyazaki. It takes place during the Second World War. Mahito, a teenager who is haunted by his mother's tragic death, is relocated from Tokyo to the serene rural home of his new stepmother, Natsuko, who also is his mom's sister, which I don't know. The dad made some choices on that. Anyway, a woman who bears I like this in the log line. A woman who bears a striking resemblance to the boy's mother. Yeah, it's her sister. Like they're related. As he tries to adjust, the strange new world grows even stranger following the appearance of a persistent gray heron who perplexes and bedevils Mahito, dubbing him the, quote, long-awaited one. So Andrew and I saw this at TIFF. We saw the subtitled version. I'll say I saw the dubbed version this time just because I was curious to hear the voice performances. But Michael, I know you saw this. So as the person who didn't see this in Toronto, what were your impressions of Boy and the Heron?
Just to tie into what you just saw, I saw it subtitled. Not because of any sort of preference, it was just the time that worked for me. And I liked it. I had just gotten off of school. We had like a half day today because it was the end of the semester. And for whatever reason, I was kind of drowsy in the movie. And so I kept like kind of like not falling asleep, but kind of, I don't know. It ended up being a good mood for the movie though, because this movie is odd. Like I think it's probably like by a comfortable margin the most surreal Miyazaki movie, and it's really dreamy, which is something I didn't expect, especially not from the first maybe 30 or 40 minutes of the movie, which is fairly realistic and like a drama surrounding like evacuating Tokyo during the war and like him coming to grips with like his mother dying and stuff like that. And then it just takes a hard turn into kind of feels like Spirited Away in a sense of there's a kind of Rubicon that gets crossed, and then all of a sudden you're in this really vibrant world in which like the nature of reality is constantly kind of bending. Like there's a really bizarre sequence in which he touches what looks like a sleeping woman, and she just melts into water. Or goo. It's like goo. And the movie kind of has all sorts of stuff like that going on. There's a bunch of parakeets that are like human sized that are walking around.
I love those guys. Best part of the movie.
I really liked it. And it felt like a weird dream, but also it gets really cosmic at times too. Because his like great granduncle is this like wizard type dude who's like harnessed the power of a meteor or something. And so he's like created this like alternate world that's linked to all these other worlds, and it gets really out there.
Pretty much Miyazaki like Andrew and I talked about this. He made a stealth multiverse movie without like
he did, or like Narnia. It kind of feels like Narnia inspired in some ways. I don't know how much Narnia has like a presence in Japan, but like it definitely has that feeling of evacuating during war and then like going into like a tunnel and then you're in like a magical land. But like one of the things that's interesting about this movie is how ominous it is at times too. Like it's kind of like Spirited Away in the sense of like the kind of wild, unpredictable, magical world. But in terms of like tone, it feels much closer to something like Princess Mononoke, in the sense of this like very serious and like spiritual and like thing that feels like everything is kind of unsettling. I mean, the movie does open with the boy's mother burning to death, and there's like all these flashbacks or not flashbacks, but like dream sequences that involve fire. And then just like this like sense of danger and foreboding, like even with the parakeets, even with the stuff that's like really goofy, like there's a part that's really like very like deeply unsettling where like the protagonist is like chained up and the parakeet is like sharpening a knife, and then you can see like little like pieces of corpses around and stuff, so he's like really about to be gutted,
and that parakeet's just grinning.
Yeah, and the parakeet's just grinning. Like I don't know, there's something about this, like you describe it and it sounds funny, but it's a little bit like it truly does feel dreamlike in the sense of like the way that it can transition from like really kind of goofy, like off the wall, like surreal stuff into stuff that's kind of unsettling. And I don't know, it was an interesting, strange movie that I'm gonna have to take some more time to chew over. I literally just saw it a few hours ago, so but I was struck by how odd it was, and how at times like somber it was, which makes sense in the context of World War II, and I'm trying to square that with like what eventually happens in the like magical world.
Yeah. Go ahead, Andrew. I was just gonna ask if like it on your second viewing if it grew or lessened in your view.
I would say that it maybe has grown in my estimation, just because every Miyazaki movie is so similar to the others, but also so much its own thing too, that it was helpful to go in the second time kind of knowing what kind of Miyazaki movie I was in for. It definitely feels like some of his older movies, like the ones that Michael mentioned, Spirited Away, Princess Mononoke, also Howl's Moving Castle, to me feels like the one that is most reminiscent of this, but kind of done with a certain like patience and assuredness that comes with being a director of Miyazaki's age and experience. Like Howl's Moving Castle is just a whirlwind of a movie. It also feels like once you've crossed a certain line, the nature of reality is constantly changing, and nothing is really like for sure known. Like the whole movie feels like it's totally in flux to me the entire time, to that movie's detriment, to be honest. This one feels to me like it is much more like knowing of what it wants to do. I think this movie is primarily allegorical, and in kind of like a meta way. Like I think that the movie is more meaningful the more you know about Hayao Miyazaki's career and life, and kind of his place within the industry. We were talking about his relationship with his son Goro Miyazaki earlier. There seems like a one-to-one relationship between Goro, Hayao Miyazaki, and like the protagonist of this movie and his granduncle, who's like trying to give the keys to the kingdom to him, but like the kid just seems to not really want them all that much. But there's also that character, the old granduncle character's relationship to this larger kingdom that exists around him, where all these parakeets who are just like goose stepping, marching lockstep with one another, getting ready to take over the throne. And to me, that read as like the rest of the animation industry, which is just so homogenous, so like brutally capitalistic. All these parakeets want to do is like kill and consume and dominate. Whereas like the granduncle wants to make something like beautiful and odd and unique, and just like let it persist on its own like beauty and magic. And this movie being so odd and unique felt to me like I don't know, it is kind of justifying the existence of itself, right? Like we need art for young people primarily, but this plays to adults too. That is, activating their imagination and just telling stories in new, strange, dreamlike, surreal ways. Not stuff that is just like baseline stimulating. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it was great.
Yeah. One thing else, just since I saw the dub, not a bad dub. Honestly, like really, really strong vocal performance, especially out of Robert Pattinson, who's fantastic. He plays the
Is
Heron.
he okay?
I was surprised that apparently Willem Dafoe is also in the dub, but he is not the Heron. I would expect that would be his role.
Plays the dying pelican, which honestly
Oh, seriously? So he's just got like a 5-second.
He does, and he kills it. Like he's great.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Who's the Heron then?
Robert
Pattinson.
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood you earlier. I thought he was what is it? Ihito? Is that the protagonist?
Mahito? No, I didn't. It was an unknown kid actor.
Speaking of, I heard that the guy who plays Hal in both the Japanese version and the English version, Hal is Christian Bale, is the guy playing the granduncle.
Let me just know Christian Bale plays the Mahito's father. Let me just say Christian Bale makes some choices. Christian Bale. Christian Bale, I think, just finished his first watch ever of The Sopranos, and then showed up at the vocal booth and was like, "Guys, have you seen The Sopranos on HBO?" And they were like, "Yeah, Christian, that's a really good show." And he's like, "All right, let's start." And then they were like, "Christian, what are you doing?" He makes some choices. I'm not gonna do an impression right now because it's not very good, but he makes some choices.
Wow.
Yeah, I think to follow Andrew, like I think it's grown in my estimation since seeing it in Toronto. I mean, I view it now more as like Miyazaki ruminating on his legacy and the movies he's kind of left behind, or he's leaving behind. It feels very much like in his version of like Kurosawa's Dreams or Scorsese's The Irishman, where it's just kind of like a little bit of like, let me go through the greatest hits, but I don't, I think a lot of the reviews coming out of TIFF were like, it's a little reductive because it's, there's a lot of scenes where it's like, yeah, this reminds me of Spirited Away, or this reminds me of Nausicaa, or this reminds me of Howl's Moving Castle, but it maybe was done a little bit better in that. But like the second time going through, I was kind of like, yeah, but I think that's a little bit of the point. Like it's supposed to kind of trigger that, like that nostalgia, that like that comparison a little bit, because it's like you're going into this dreamscape that's almost like, if you want to just really dive into the metaphor, is like his output with Studio Ghibli, and is kind of like, so you would run into stuff there that would be like reminiscent of stuff that he's done before, while also kind of feeling fresh and new to a degree. And
yeah, I feel like it does feel like, I don't know if it would be quite fair to the movie to say it's simply him playing the greatest hits. Like whoever was saying that, like watching it felt almost uncanny in the sense of it was familiar in a way, like familiar enough that like I recognized tropes, but then the tropes were deployed in ways that felt unfamiliar to me.
Yeah. No, so I kind of read it that way, and I think that like I found more out of that. Like I kind of see Miyazaki straddling. So I was reading some stuff where I think like the Parakeet King, he kind of like that's kind of loosely based off of forgot his first name, Suzuki, the producer for Studio Ghibli. Like that's
Oh,
kind of like
really?
that's Miyazaki's like
Dang.
version of him, which you're like that's your boss, and like that's how you portray him, which is funny. But I kind of see Miyazaki a little bit as like he's a little bit of Mahito, but then he's a little bit of the grand uncle as well. Like he's just kind of he's working both sides. I don't necessarily see it as like him and his son as much like on this one. It was more just I kind of just felt like it was just him internally kind of working through stuff of just kind of like I like created these I like created worlds. I like created all the like all of this stuff that's that's resonated with people, that's created like money and theme parks in Japan and like all this like acclaim worldwide. And then he's like, then I'm going to be gone. And then like, then what? Like, it doesn't seem like there's anybody to hand it off to at the studio. Like it's just going to kind of go away. And then what? And I don't think the movie necessarily like, I think some people also would like it to like engage with that directly and like kind of like work through that, but I don't necessarily feel like that's what the movie's supposed to be doing, because that's it's that's kind of working on a more metaphorical level than what the narrative is actually doing. But I definitely like got more out of it this second time and felt like it's still not like top tier Miyazaki for me, but I think it's definitely I like it a lot more than like Howl's Moving Castle and Castle in the Sky and some of those.
Me too.
It is also like profoundly anti-bird, which I thought was hilarious. Like, there's never a moment in this movie where a bird is not antagonistic on some level,
or being nasty,
or
in
being
some
nasty.
way. Just shitting everywhere.
Dude, there's bird poop everywhere in this movie. Also, the animations that they do for the heron and the pelican swallowing things are incredible. Like just the like bulge in the gullet, like as it's like moving down. There's that one scene where those little like round
the
white guys, are like floating up, and the pelicans like swooping down and just gulping them. And there's just something like about the like squishiness of everything that it just gets like rope like.
Also, the animation on the titular heron and how it is gradually revealed what his true form is.
Oh my gosh!
You just start seeing teeth.
Yeah, I was like, why does this heron have such weird teeth? And then it's like, is that a what is that red
which that's why
mouth?
Honestly I liked Robert Pattinson's performance better than the actor in the Japanese, like in the subbed version. Like Robert
the Japanese guy sounds very like he's making choices too.
He's making choice. Robert Pattinson's really good. Like he has just like this like deep, like just kind of like sinister sneakiness to him that you're just like it's like evil, but he's not like doing. But like I feel like it's a very like smart. He's making smart choices. I don't know. Honestly, like he's good regardless of the subbed or dubbed. I was like Robert Pattinson's very good as the Heron. Shout out to him.
Robert Pattinson, good actor.
Good actor.
Hot take. You heard it here first.
Good actor. Boy and the Heron. It's in theaters now. Definitely check it out if you can. Be a good hell. It's gonna be Christmas coming up. Grab the family and go experience that together.
Yeah, make sure that they're cool with like seeing lots of like blood and guts. There's a fish disemboweling sequence that was very gross.
Yeah, it's just it is.
Oh yeah, the scene of like all the guts just kind of like pouring out of that fish. One of the grossest moments in Miyazaki's filmography.
Even the like Willem Dafoe pelican is pretty gross because he's all mangled up and stuff. Anyway, good movie. Take the kids.
Let them see something nasty.
That's right.
Yeah. If
Tell
you
them
want
to grow up.
That's right.
One not to take the kids to, not because it has anything bad in it, but just because it's not very entertaining at all, is Maestro, which we're recording this on Wednesday the 20th. It is now on Netflix, should you choose to watch it that way. I went and saw it at the Art House Theater here on over the weekend, and it is the latest from Auteur director, maybe Bradley Cooper.
This has not been getting the same buzz that A Star Is Born did.
It shouldn't.
Yeah.
It shouldn't. So Bradley Cooper, I saw somebody mention this, like he needs to direct a movie where he doesn't star in it. I would like to see that as well. He stars in it. It's a biopic of Leonard Bernstein. You know, very, very, very famous, world-renowned conductor, composer.
Inspiration for Lydia Tarr.
Yeah, inspiration for Lydia Tarr. Honestly, just go see Tarr instead of watching this movie.
I wonder, was this movie in production before Tar came out?
What?
It's been in production for a minute, I think.
The rights to it.
Yeah, I think they've been wanting to make because both Spielberg and Scorsese are producers on this, and I think it's because both of them at one point were going to make the movie.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, I remember Scorsese was going to make this movie at one point. But if you just want to if you look at the producers, you have Spielberg, Scorsese, Todd Phillips, just the dudes, producing this movie.
Wow.
But yeah, it stars Bradley Cooper plays Leonard Bernstein. Carey Mulligan plays his wife. What's her name? Felicia. Yeah, Felicia. You have a number of other. It's just I don't know. I saw really what you can say about this movie is that this movie has nothing to say. It has no like insight or perspective on anything. I couldn't tell you like that I feel like I understand Leonard Bernstein on a level. I don't think I could tell you that I understand his wife Felicia on a level. He's definitely hiding his sexuality, but like there's no perspective on that other than he's occasionally just kind of going off to make out with a dude. I don't, he's clearly very talented at music, but I wouldn't know that. I never feel like you spend much time to like experience his music outside of one. Please, please, please give me the Oscar one take sequence where Bradley Cooper as Leonard Bernstein conducts this orchestra in this church, which is, it's cool. It's honestly the most like resonating emotional moment of the movie, which otherwise is pretty bland. But it covers the course of his life. It starts in black and white for I don't know why, and then shifts into like color Academy ratio, and then into widescreen for the third act, which again I just feel like is kind of some film school. Let's be cool kind of aesthetic to it, which just kind of strikes me like Bradley Cooper more than anybody like wants an Oscar, and I just feel like this he doesn't deserve it for this movie. He's not great in it as Leonard Bernstein. He's not that great. But like give him the Oscar so that maybe he can go. But at the same time I was like kind of give him the Oscar to go do more interesting stuff. But like I was thinking about it, I was like, well, Bradley Cooper's not that interesting of an actor. I don't really care what he does, Like
He needs to like work with Ben Affleck. Like they're from the same school of like actor turned director, like just meat and potatoes. Maybe George Clooney could they just need to start a club of like actors turned directors that make competent like middle brow entertainment.
yeah, but this is competent not because of him. Like he knows how to get a crew together. Matthew Libatique, who is the cinematographer, is great. He's definitely the star of this, but I don't know. I like Clooney's directing's not great. Affleck's the best of the three of those guys.
He's also making the movies that are the least like desperate for acclaim too. Like he seems to have settled into like I'm just making, these. I'm making air.
I'm making air, y'all. Like, give me a Golden Globe. Yeah, no, I don't know. I really can't recommend this. Like it's just real. It's just very hollow. Carey Mulligan's not even that good. Like it's just really like hollow. Give me an award performance that I'm like. It's just one of those movies that like comes out that's just geared towards winning awards, and everybody in it is trying to win awards, and you're just like, this is all like. I want to watch a movie. I don't want to watch you try to feel validated in life. And yeah, that's about all I have. I'm so sorry to Reed Ramsey if he's listening to this, because he was going to talk about this movie last week and how much he liked it. I would love to hear that, because I couldn't find much redeeming qualities out of it.
Dang.
Yeah, Maestro. It's on Netflix now, where honestly, like that feels right. Like a lot of those, you're like, oh, like I wish we got more, longer theatrical runs for some of these movies that pop up on streaming. Just dump Maestro on Netflix. Like that's fine. Maestro.
May, December in theaters.
Yeah,
for
right.
real.
Yeah,
Real.
like May, December should be like have like a long theatrical run. Maestro, like it's fine. Just dump it on like Maestro, the new Roma. Like it's just toss it on there. Whatever. People remember Roma.
I still like Roma.
Yeah.
I was not
Michael. Like, come on. When was the last time, other than 3 seconds ago, where I mentioned Roma, have you thought about Roma in the last 5
Anytime
years?
I think about Alfonso Cuarón, and I'm like, what does that dude doing these days? Oh
much
yeah,
are
he
you
did
thinking?
Roma.
You're thinking about Alfonso Cuarón.
He's the acclaimed director. He's like one of the biggest like Mexican exports to like international cinema.
No, I'm just thinking about Roma.
This is revisionist history. Like, it's not absurd to be thinking about Alfonso Cuarón.
No, that's not it. I mean, you can, but like, and then I'm not thinking of. I mean, I thought of him recently because the third Harry Potter was on cable, and I was at home, and my family was watching the third Harry Potter. But my mind didn't go to remember Roma.
I think that while we're talking about Alfonso Cuarón, we need to mention Y Tu Mamá También is great.
Yeah, that's a great one.
He's made a lot of good movies. He's
a great director. Just nobody thinks of Roma. Like
I think a lot about like the scene, where the students get massacred, because not because of like exclusively that scene, but like there's not that many modern movies that deal with like that unrest. Like, anyway, whatever. We're not talking about Roma right now. What have you done?
I needed something more interesting than Maestro, because Maestro's so just like deafeningly boring that I didn't know what to do. Yeah.
Hey Grace, you have a movie to talk about. That's also in black and white, right?
I do.
Yeah, talk about a good black and white movie.
It's
Grace.
great. It's interesting. A tight 60 minutes. 1945's Detour by Edgar Ulmer, or directed by Edgar Ulmer, follows a young piano player in a seedy, not so seedy, but not necessarily a great jazz dive bar. Let's see, I gotta remember the name. The piano player's name is Al Roberts. He is in love with his lounge singer girlfriend, Sue. She's got a gorgeous voice. It opens with her singing. I have wanted to see this movie for years and years and years now. And now that I have joined the ranks of Criterion subscribers, I get to watch it. I felt so lucky to cross something off my list, something so high on my must-watch list, finally cross that off. And this movie did not disappoint. But it is sad and disappointing and hopeless and bleak, but great. Al and his girl Sue, they work this dead-end nightclub, and Sue decides to move cross-country to LA. She's talented, she's beautiful, she thinks she can make it, and she has the spark, so she goes. But this is after Al has proposed to her. You're my girl, let's get married. No.
Does he say like, yeah, you're my girl, see? Come on.
Yeah, they do talk like that. Yeah. I mean, the banter and like the dialogue is very of a time, and it is it's fun to watch that and to listen to it. It's quick, it's fast. Everybody, I mean, they were timing everybody and trying to beat their record. How quickly can I get this line out? And but Sue moves cross country, and Al decides that he's going to follow her. He hawks everything he has, and he only has enough money to eat. So what does he do? He hitchhikes. And he gets pretty far. He hitchhikes across country. It's exhausting. It's not easy to do. Not everybody wants to pick him up. And I don't really blame them, and he doesn't really blame them either. He's a shady looking kind of guy. He doesn't bathe. His beard gets all scraggly, and he's just nobody on the side of the road, a hitchhiker. Why would we bother? Well, somebody bothers.
Sounds like a lot of like white guys at a brewery nowadays, to be honest. But I get the point.
Like a scuzzy,
Scuzzy doesn't clean,
doesn't
bearded
clean, but I mean that's like
individual.
catnip to some people, but not to these folks driving cross country.
All
They
right.
don't stop for him, except for one person.
Well,
Someone does stop for him. This man picks him up. Doesn't really talk to him at first. The two just sort of sit in silence, sort of sizing each other up. Then the driver starts to open up to Al and starts to tell him, starts to tell him about his trip across country. He asks him, hey, where are you going? Al says, I'm going to LA. Driver says, great, me too. So we'll go all the way. You and me together on this drive. But then things take a turn, a detour.
Yeah.
Oh,
You
yeah,
got
you
it.
see where I'm going. A detour.
Mhm.
This man starts spending money on Al. He takes him out to a restaurant. He's putting gas in the car. He lets Al drive the car until it starts to rain and Al pulls over. We've got to get this hood up on the car. It's a convertible. We've got to pull the hood up.
Mhm.
But the driver, I forget his name again. I'm so sorry. I saw this like a week ago, and I guess I was half asleep. Charles Haskell Jr. That is the character's name. That is the driver. So Charles is asleep in the car. He won't wake up to Al sort of pushing and shoving him. Al opens the car door. Charles falls, strikes his head, dies.
Nice.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What have I just gotten myself into? Al thinks poor man is just a victim of circumstance, and he does everything he tries. You watch this man try and do the right thing, but he knows like no one's gonna believe me. Who would even? I'm a hitchhiker. I belong to no one. No one belongs to me. I have no money to my name. I'm the last person to see this man alive. Nobody would ever believe me. So now this becomes a story of assuming Charles's identity. Al, pretending to be Charles now, picks up another hitchhiker, a kind of dirty young lady. And she complicates things, this woman, this Vera, played by Anne Savage, who is amazing. Anne Savage establishes herself as this sort of cult actress at the time, and she knows she's no Hollywood A-lister, but I mean as a B-lister or a C-lister for cult, amazing. She is sharp, she is deadly. I mean, she might as well have been the rock that killed Charles, but she's the noose that Al almost hangs himself with. She recognizes the car, and she does not recognize the driver. While Al and Charles were together, Charles starts talking about this hot little tomato. He says that he calls this woman a tomato. If that's the kind of dialogue you're looking for, maybe change my little headline from the only girl to the hot little tomato.
If somebody called you a hot little tomato, would you like that, Grace, or would you be like, whoa?
I'd probably toss my hair a little, ha 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 ha, and then maybe I'd get in his car.
Right.
She did. It worked on her.
All right.
But Charles recounts the story of how he picked up this hot little tomato. You pick up a dame and you think that she'd be a little grateful that you stopped your car for her, and she wasn't.
Oh.
So he lets her out. The hot little tomato that he let out is Vera, the woman that Al has just picked up, that knows his true identity. Oh my God, what happens next is Detour. It's amazing. This is a movie with no pretense. It knows that the story that it has to tell is somewhat is a little cautionary. I mean, there at the end, there's a moral, a sort of finger wag of don't kill people, don't accidentally kill people, and don't
It's a good message.
steal and assume their identity because the cops will find you.
I do like that he chooses maybe the hardest path, which is I'm going to pretend to be this man.
So it's so sad because it doesn't really feel like he has a choice. He thinks to himself, okay, I could tell an officer what happened. He fell asleep and he wouldn't wake up, and he picked me up. I'm just this hitchhiker that he picked up out of the kindness of his heart, and I opened the door and he fell out. And well, what will they say? He didn't fall out. You pushed him, or
Right.
And Al kind of wonders, well, maybe he was already dead when it happened because he wouldn't wake up. I was shaking him and he wouldn't wake up. Maybe he was already dead, and maybe it wasn't me. But he knows that no one would ever believe that. No one would ever take his side. And the choice that he makes is absolutely the wrong one. He takes the wrong turn at the detour, and he drags this man's lifeless body, dumps him in a river, strips him of his clothes, swaps clothes, takes his wallet. So now there's no question. He is no longer Al Roberts. For the time being, he is Charles Haskell Jr. And Vera, in her infinite wisdom, decides, yes, we'll continue the charade because I know the truth. I've got this on you. So we're just going to let this ride. If you try and rat me out for essentially holding you hostage, I'll go to the police and they'll believe me over you. But I as I was watching this, all I could wonder is like, well, why, Vera, would they believe you over him? I don't really know, but she holds that over him, and it's the catalyst for a very tumultuous relationship between the two. It's a taut, sexy thriller. I mean, there's something sort of romantic about it, because Al has in his mind that Sue will believe me if I can just get to her. If I can get to Sue, she's that shining light. If I can get to her, everything will be okay. And he had a chance to explain it all to her, but he decided, no, I don't want to bother her with that. I'm too afraid to bring her into this. So again, he makes the wrong choice. All he does is make wrong choice after wrong choice and accidentally kill 2 people. Oh no. And he feels really bad about it at the very end. Good. That's good. And he does get picked up by the police at the very end, and that's also good. But, you kind of wonder, what would you do in his situation? Like,
I probably would have run away. Like, I don't know that I would have tried to, like, I don't know. I saw this movie years ago, and you talking about it has reminded me a little bit more about it. And, like, one of the things that I remember liking about it is, like, a lot of times when people talk about film noir, they are usually referring to, like, crime fiction and detective fiction, or cinema, I guess. But there's, like, another subgenre of film noir, and it's usually the more low budget ones, which is what you're describing, is like characters making one wrong decision after another and trying to outrun the consequences the whole time. And those are usually, like, really quick. Like, did you say this is only 60 minutes or something?
Yeah,
like
it's
that?
like an hour and
Yeah, what an
5
amazing
minutes.
amazing thing. You watch 60 minutes of this dude just, like, ruining his life.
So quick, in such quick succession. And it's like, it does sort of, it could expand. I mean, Vera is talking about, like, this whole big money scheme. Hey, this guy comes from money. If you continue to pretend to be Charles, then maybe we can go shake down some people for more money. We can scam his old man. We can get this inheritance. But, and maybe some other movies would have expanded on that. But, I mean, Al shuts it all down. I don't look like him. I don't have this. I can't answer to this. I can't answer all these. Instead of, like, putting yourself in those situations and then trying to figure it out on the fly, he shuts it all down. So, that's what I mean when I say, like, this movie knows exactly what it is and like what it's trying to get out as quickly as possible. It doesn't spiral out of control beyond the car that they're in together beyond the hotel room that they stay in together. It's also very confined too in that sense. Confined for time, confined for space.
This movie's Ben Affleck. It's not Bradley Cooper. It knows what it is.
I think it's worth
It's George
considering.
Clooney. It knows what it is. It's Angelina Jolie. Let's throw in another actress turned director. Let's not forget the only other girl.
She's gonna lean in that Bradley Cooper, George Clooney territory. I feel like though.
Yeah, but this was phenomenal. I was so at every twist and every turn. I mean, I want to say that I saw it coming, but it still shocked me to the point where I was covering my face with my hands. I was so shocked by the ending. I mean, we've come this far. It doesn't feel like I'm spoiling anything. It just came out in 1945, but he accidentally, maybe not so accidentally, strangles Vera with a phone cord. She somehow wraps it around her neck.
I hate it when I accidentally strangle people.
Well,
it's tough.
My worst.
She takes the phone that he's going to use to try again to call Sue and figure everything out. The phone that she is going to use to call the police and tell everything on. She grabs the phone. She runs into the other room, slams the door. All he has is like the phone cord, not like the, from the receiver to the phone, but the cord from the outlet. And he pulls and he pulls and he pulls and he pulls. And then he stops and he opens the door and there she is hanging off the bed, phone not in her hand anymore with the cord wrapped around her neck. And he's just strangled her. And it's like, oh my God, how do you keep accidentally killing people? You're so good at this. But
it's worth thinking about all the things that we've lost as a country since the 1940s. 60-minute movies, those accents, phones with cords. It's a great time to recapture the bygone America.
Yeah.
Michael's feeling especially sentimental because I think you just got a smartphone, right?
Oh no, I didn't. Did I tell you? I was able to get another non-smartphone.
No,
but it can do group chats now.
Will not work.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's Detour. It's phenomenal. Give it a watch.
On that old Criterion channel.
Yeah, I'm one of you guys now. One of us. So.
I don't
also on Criterion channel. All right, we're gonna take a quick break, and then we're gonna find out. We're gonna send some daughters out to be married after this break. And we're back with part 2 of episode 464 of Cinematary. In this part, we're going to continue our quick Patreon pick series with a pick by Candace Sisson, and that is 2005's Pride and Prejudice, directed by Joe Wright from a screenplay by Deborah Mogic. This is a cool one. Guys, like, write this one down. It's based on a novel of the same name by Jane Austen.
Never heard of her.
People should talk about her more.
That's not like some. I mean, that's a cat that people know. Like that's somebody that people know. So that's kind of cool. Like, this is based on a novel by Jane Austen.
She just had her 248th birthday last week.
Oh wow!
So.
It's incredible how long she's lived, So think of all the things she's experienced over those 2 centuries.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy when you're dead. The film stars Keira Knightley, Matthew McFadden, Rosamund Pike, Donald Sutherland, Carey Mulligan, and Judi Dench. Elizabeth Bennet lives with her mother, father, and sisters in the English countryside. As the eldest, she faces mounting. Is she the eldest? Yeah, she's the eldest. She faces mounting pressure from her parents to marry. When the outspoken Elizabeth is introduced to the handsome and upper-class Mr. Darcy, sparks fly. Although there is obvious chemistry between the two, Darcy's overly reserved nature threatens the fledgling relationship. Screenwriter Deborah Mogic initially attempted to make her script as faithful to the novel as possible, writing from Elizabeth's perspective while preserving much of the original dialogue. Wright encouraged greater deviation from the text, including changing the dynamics within the Bennet family. Wright and Mogic set the film in an earlier period and avoided depicting a, quote, perfectly clean Regency world, presenting instead a, quote, muddy hymn version of the time. Joe Wright was considered a surprising choice for a film in the romance drama genre due to his past work with social realism. Now he's just making shit like this constantly.
I was about to say, what a pivot.
Wright's body of work had impressed the producers, who were looking for a fresh perspective. They sent him a script despite the fact that he had not read the novel. He commented that at the time, quote, "I didn't know if I was really all that interested. I thought I was a bit more mainstream than this, a bit more edgy. But then I read the script and I was surprised. I was
Is he a bit more mainstream or a bit more edgy?
You can
Too
be both.
mainstream for Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah.
He's both.
He novel of the Vanguard.
He next read the novel, which he called, quote, an amazing piece of character observation, and it really seemed like the first piece of British realism. It felt like a true story. Had a lot of truth in it about understanding how to love other people, understanding how to overcome prejudices, understanding the things that separate us from other people, ... things like that.
This guy sounds like he's trying to piece together a term paper from Smart Notes.
ChatGPT wrote that for him.
Wright found casting of the film to be difficult because he was very particular about the type of person he wanted to work with. Though Wright had not initially pictured someone as attractive as English actress Keira Knightley for the lead role of Elizabeth, he cast her as after realizing that the actress, quote, is really a tomboy and has a lively mind and a great sense of humor. Knightley at the time was known for Bend It Like Beckham in the Pirates of the Caribbean film series. She had been an Austen fan since age 7, but initially feared taking the role out of apprehension that she would be doing, quote, an absolute copy of Jennifer L's performance, which she deeply admired. Knightley believed Elizabeth is, quote, what you aspire to be. She's funny, she's witty and intelligent. She's a fully rounded and very much loved character. They found the casting of Darcy especially hard due to the character's iconic status and because, quote, Colin Firth cast a very long shadow as the 1995 version. Wright later commented that his choice of Knightley allowed him to cast comparative unknown Matthew McFadden, something that would have been impossible had he chose a less well-known actress for Elizabeth Bennet. McFadden at the time was known for his role in the British television spy series Spooks, but had no recognition internationally. A fan of the actor's television work, Wright called him, quote, a proper manly man. I didn't want a pretty boy kind of actor. His properties were the ones I felt I needed for Darcy.
Matthew's stop letting this guy talk.
A great big hunk of a guy.
Is that his words? A great big hunk of a guy.
A great big hunk of a guy. That's what Tom Wham's Gam. A great big hunk of a guy. Italian composer Dario Marinelli wrote the film score. The soundtrack is performed by the French pianist Jean-Yves Theobald, something like that. I don't know. Accompanied by the English Chamber Orchestra. The early piano sonatas of Beethoven, quote, became a point of reference and starting point for the original score. Some pieces were inspired by the film's period, with the assumption that they could conceivably have been heard during that time and contained actual dance cues that were fitting for the late 18th century. In 2005, the New York Times said, as the tide of feminism that crested 2 decades ago recedes and the old advance and retreat games of courtship return, Pride and Prejudice speaks wistfully to the moment. Elizabeth Bennet and Fitzwilliam Darcy are tantalizing early prototypes for the Katharine Hepburn, Spencer Tracy ideal of lovers as brainy, passionate sparring partners. That the world teems with fantasies of Mr. Darcy and his ilk, there is no doubt. How many of his type are to be found outside the pages of a novel, however, is another matter. 2005, The Guardian said, there are no greater textual variations or interpretive liberties in this Pride and Prejudice, but both of its key ingredients are there in generous qualities, and it is very nicely acted with a terrific above-the-title turn from Knightley. It canters along like a thoroughbred racehorse, switching to a gallop or a rising trot when necessary. It's an invigorating ride. And Roger Ebert said, when Lizzie and Darcy finally accept each other in Pride and Prejudice, I felt an almost unreasonable happiness. Why was that? I am impervious to romance in most films, seeing it as a manifestation of box office requirements. Here is it different, because Darcy and Elizabeth are good and decent people who would rather do the right thing than convenience themselves. Anyone who will sacrifice their own happiness for higher considerations deserves to be happy. When they realize that about each other, their hearts leap. And reader, so did mine.
Aw,
On that note,
softy.
let's talk about some Pride and some Prejudice. I'm gonna flip it over to Grace and the English majors, and let's go. Take it away,
Well,
Grace.
I'd love to. First, I just want to say that I have a very difficult time thinking about this movie critically. I look at it with the rosiest and pinkest of glasses. It is truly such a comfort movie to myself and to many, many other people. I'm positive. Hopeless romantics, hopeful romantics. This is the movie. Everyone is so beautiful. Everything is so beautiful. Everyone is so witty and funny and charming and endearing in their own way. And I want to go to a fancy ball. I want to dance. I want to fall in love. I want to fall out of love. It's so darling. I have seen this movie a lot. And then this was also this was a rewatch, of course, but I hadn't seen it for a while. I probably hadn't seen it since undergrad, when I took a bunch of classes on Jane Austen. Thank you, Dr. Hilary Havens.
Did you take a major authors course on Jane Austen?
No, she just snuck it. I took a bunch of classes from Dr. Havens, and then she just snuck Jane Austen into every one of her classes.
Gotcha.
Cool. She's just a really big Austen head, Austonian. That's it. So I was very lucky to study under her, and she definitely instilled that within me. But so it was really nice to return to it. But the biggest thing that I really noticed, or what really struck me and that I paid attention to, was the camera stealing glances between Darcy and Lizzie. I thought that was so tender and timid, and I loved it. I got a little giddy and giggly myself, like watching Lizzie quick steal a glance over at Darcy and then quick look away, them meet eyes and then immediately turn away. I loved that use of camera for their point of view, and that really worked for me the most and was the most like the biggest standout aspect of the movie for this watch for me. So
cool. I will just kind of piggyback off that and say that I think this movie is like really effective in like making every small moment feel like a really big moment. It's something as small as like we made eye contact, or like he touched my hand. Like you get these insert shots and like really like powerful cuts in those little moments. And I think that this movie is so beloved by so many people, not just because the story is beloved by so many people, but also the filmmaking really like brings that story to life in a way that I mean, I've never seen the TV version. I imagine
that one is truly beloved.
I know that a lot of people love that.
One. Yeah.
Well, that's when Candace was like Pride and Prejudice, I was like the Colin Firth one or the Keira Knightley one.
But does the Colin Firth one like employ as many cinematic techniques as you see done here, or is it just kind of like putting the whole story?
It's the whole story.
Yeah.
I do think like Joe Wright like is particular, like, I mean, as much as we can clown him for like just kind of being stuck in like costume drama thing like that he's been doing since this movie, like I think he's like a particularly inspired person for just the technical aspects of those types of movies. Like he does a great job of making them not feel stuffy. Like that a lot of his movies have other problems, but they always feel very vibrant cinematically, and I really appreciate that about like this movie, for instance.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Especially when like, I don't know how many of y'all have read, I mean, I know Grace, you've read them. Like Jane Austen's novels, as much as they've been adapted cinematically, they don't actually lend themselves very well to like cinematic adaptation because she doesn't really write scenes so much as she has like her authors or her narrators usually have this like kind of like sky high view where it feels like you're being recounted something after the fact the whole time
Yeah.
rather than like it happening beat by beat like a movie scene would. And so in order to like block these scenes and to have them like filled with dramatic tension on a moment by moment, like those glances and the physical interactions between them, like those are conscious additions by the filmmakers to dramatize the kind of larger arcs that the book is generally dealing in. And I think that it works really well here.
Yeah, I would agree. The other thing that I want to flag up is just the cast of this movie is insane.
Stacked, like a totally stacked cast.
And stacked in a way that they didn't even realize at the time, because so many of these actors have gone on to have even bigger careers since then. Like Zach mentioned, Mr. Darcy is Tom Wambsgans in Succession, which I just finished the week before watching this. So that was fun to kind of see him in a different context. But like the Bennett girls, you have Keira Knightley. You have Carey Mulligan, who I think this was her first movie. Crazy.
Oh, wow. Really?
Jenna Malone had been in Donnie Darko before this. Rosamund Pike had been in very little before
She was a Bond girl before this.
In Bond Girl?
Wasn't she in Die Another Day or something like that?
She was in Die Another Day. Was that? That was before this. Yeah.
Bond girl. I mean, she was eventually in Gone Girl.
She was eventually in Gone Girl.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
Bond Girl.
She was.
Gone Girl.
She was very bad in Die Another Day.
So yeah, it's just like every character you run into is played by another like household name actor. Like the reveal that the patroness. Lady Catherine, is that her name? Judi Dench is amazing.
That is amazing. I had totally
like,
forgotten.
Slowly like swiveling around her shoulder before the reveal, and you see that amazing wig that she is wearing, just so imposing and
we also, I mean, just outside of, you also have like Tom Hollander has a small role. You have Donald Sutherland. You have Rupert Friend is in it.
Everybody's great.
You just have a lot of like people. Yeah, I mean, it's 2005, so it's getting close to like 20 years. But you're just like, yeah, like this is you wouldn't know it at the time, but like super stacked cast. Yeah, I just real quickly working off what Michael was talking about. Like Joe, right? Like he seems kind of like a dummy, just like listening to his quotes. Like he seems kind of like a dumbass. It is
kind of amazing that he's gone to all this like classic literature because he doesn't seem like the guy who like actually is having a good time.
Well, he seems like a dummy, but he seems like he also knows how to direct. I mean, you don't have to necessarily be smart to direct. So I mean, it's just like he clearly knows what he's doing to like make an entertaining movie. And yeah, like it's just kind of funny that he like they were like, oh, like we wanted somebody with some social realism, and then like his career since, I mean, stuff, even stuff like Atonement like has this like period costume appeal to it. But he's done this, he's done Anna Karenina, he's done Pan. I mean, everybody remembers Pan, right?
He did
that social realist movie.
He did the Cyrano movie.
True,
he did. So I mean, like he's had a run of stuff. I think he's fine.
Atonement also has some serious cinematic chops in it.
Atonement's good.
Atonement is very good.
It has like that really long oneer right in the middle, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, Atonement's a legit movie. I like that one.
Also, like an
amazing.
This isn't.
This is great too.
No. This absolutely is.
This movie is like proof of concept for Atonement. Really, like.
Yeah.
In terms of like the kind of like style that they're doing, like the way that for instance, like in this movie, you have these like sequences, and sometimes they're one takes, and sometimes they're editing, but you get this really intimate understanding of the geography of the house. Where a character will be walking through the house or whatever, and Atonement's doing that all over the place in the first half of it. I think it works really well in this movie too.
Well, I think also like the point also, I haven't seen like the Colin Firth, the BBC version, but like to what Andrew was asking, like, is it like a BBC, is it like a TV movie, or or does it have like more cinematic flourishes to it? So like I'm talking without seeing it, but I'm just like, yeah, I would assume it's probably more subdued just because it's a TV. It's like a TV adaptation. It's not like they're looking for much out of it. It's more of like an acting.
This is very elevated.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Because just in like a lot, some of like the editing choices we talked about, like some of the editing choices, just some of like how, like we talked about, like how he blocks scenes. Like it feels more. He adds like a charge to it so that it doesn't feel like, it doesn't get to be too like stuffy costume drama. Like there's like a propulsion to it a lot of time.
Are there any individual moments in that regard that stand out to y'all? Michael was alluding to one of the first shots in the movie where it's like this long tracking shot following Keira Knightley as she walks up to the house, and then the camera kind of goes through the house, and you see Mary playing the piano, and then it kind of like meets Keira Knightley again on the other side of the house as she's like eavesdropping in on a scene through a window.
It's a real banger of a way to like begin the movie.
Absolutely.
To meet the entire family and to get a feel for who the Bennetts are, this poorer class family. I mean, that nails it. You get the family dynamic just like that.
I had a professor in college, and I think this was in the class I took on like the history of the novel, in which we read Pride and Prejudice for. And he showed this clip of the movie, like that very scene that you're talking about, because like Grace, you just mentioned the poorer class, and he was pointing out that like this scene, in contrast to like other adaptations like that set the scene, like and Zach, you kind of talked about this in your intro, but like they're really trying to like hammer home the kind of like squalor of the Bennett estate, you know, to like play up the stakes, because it's, I think in modern day, it feels so dusty and abstract, these stakes of like, well, our daughters can't inherit our home, and so we have to marry them off in order for this estate to be like, you know, to exist anymore. And like the movie, like she's like walking through animals, and like there's like a pond or whatever that she walks through, and it's just like definitely a lot more like that specific entrance is trying to set up I think much more like the like economic precarity of being like an upper class person who is on the verge of like toppling, I guess.
Yeah, I when I was when I was researching on the notes, they talked a lot about this one more than I think, especially like the Colin Firth one, being much more like conscious of the like the socioeconomic levels. Like,
yeah, because you have it. Is it when they go to the Darcy's house, where they have basically like a museum in their home or something like that, and it's
the sculpture gallery.
They don't even show like the facade of Pemberley. I thought that was like such an interesting choice to like not even show the outside of the house, the estate, the manor. It's more about what's inside and how grandiose and opulent the inside is, and as well as we're led to believe the outside is. But I also just really like the tracking shot through the Bennett's household, because it also establishes it as a girl's house, like with their clothes hanging everywhere, ribbons and everything through. I mean, like as if the 5 daughters running wild through, giggling, laughing, cooing over whatever girls do, then, you know, nothing really changes. We still worry about our clothes and men and whatnot.
Mr. Bennett is just kind of like often.
Honestly, like Donald Sutherland, like living the ideal life, like just like chilling out at this like nice house. I guess they're poor. I'm like, I don't know, this house seems like pretty awesome.
They're not like poor, but it's like
this is also like something sending his daughters away. Like, oh, all right, that seems fun.
But it's like, I think like, I don't know, like I guess you don't want to like hammer this home too much, but like I guess like what Jane Austen is often capturing, and like I think this movie does capture to an extent, is like it's not that they're poor, but it's that they're like, for the first time, because of like the rise of capitalism, to be honest, like the aristocracy faced precarity, because the system that allowed them to have stability was kind of undergoing a shift in like the 18th century. And so like this whole like issue of lineage became so much more important, or at least this is what I remember from my college class. And so like it's not a story about a family being poor, it's a story of a family being downwardly mobile, from like what would have in a generation ago have been considered like stability. And I don't know, there is something like weirdly relatable to that, even though I'm not rich, but like, you know, millennials or whatever being the first like downwardly mobile American generation in like, you know, since World War II or something like that. Like there is something to be said for like the emotional stakes of it.
Yeah.
I was taught Jane Austen in a couple of classes in college, and one of them was actually a like romantic period class where we were reading a lot of you know, like Samuel Taylor Coleridge and William Wordsworth and people like that, John Keats, and the professor made the point that Jane Austen is sometimes considered a like capital R romantic writer, like not an author of romances, but like a writer who's very interested in like the relationship between people and nature and things like that. And I think that the class of the Bennets kind of intersects with that a little bit. Like Lizzie just kind of exists so much in nature compared to just like these big opulent palaces that you see Darcy and Mr. Bingley in. And I also really like the way that nature's captured in this movie cinematically. Like the opening title sequence is like this slow fade sunrise that's really beautiful. And like you get at one point this hard cut to Lizzie Bennet like standing on a cliffside with like wind rushing through her hair, and like the movie like holds on that like wide vista shot for a really long time. I also love the long walk of like Darcy coming through the mist.
The
right at sunrise too, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a pretty great. When she's on the cliff, that's like the most like insane, like I need to go think like sequence. Like she's just on this cliff, the wind is just like blowing, she's just like sitting there hot, and you're just like, all right, like that's my thinking spot too. I relate.
Yeah, well, her love of all things nature, being outdoors. I mean, those are sort of idle pastimes for a woman of her time, and that also like speaks to her character. Her reading is a huge indictment of her, you know, status as a lady. But it was beautiful. It felt very sublime. I see the capital R romance there, but
well, and there's that scene with Lady Catherine, right, where she's like, "What are your skills? Do you have like these skills or whatever?" And like, can you do like, is it like some of the skills she names are like absurd, like how well do you draw, or like do you do archery, or I can't remember what it is, but like, yeah, Andrew, now that you mention it, there is like a big, especially in this adaptation with the way that nature is captured, like that, the kind of transcendent experience of being present in the world is more important than like marketable, like commodified skills, I guess.
Right. And you see nature kind of reflecting things in the characters, like when Darcy does just kind of like spill all of his like unrequited feelings to Lizzie, it's during like a rainstorm and they're both like covered in water.
That's another good scene.
Yeah,
that's another good scene. I thought they were gonna like make out, like hate, like be like, I fucking hate you, and then start making out.
He wants to. Like, he almost does it, but it's right after she says like, "If you were the last man on earth, I wouldn't marry you." And he's like,
"Yeah," and I was like,
not.
And I was like, I feel like they're still gonna make out. I was like, I think they're still gonna make it, and then I was like, oh, they didn't. Bummer.
Did you guys laugh a lot? Is this not like one of the funniest movies you've ever seen?
It's really funny.
Yeah, it is funny.
We haven't mentioned Mr. Collins yet, but he's
one
of the funniest elements of this
story. The scene where he's going to propose to Elizabeth, and like she's like openly begging her whole family not to leave the room, so he won't do it.
Well, I like how it starts. He's like, he tells Mrs. Bennet, I really love Jane. I think I'm actually in love with her, and I'm going to ask her to marry me. She says, no, actually, she's promised to someone else. And he looks over. Okay, how about the other one? She's like, yeah, you can have Lizzie.
A very agreeable alternative, he says. And when he approaches Lizzie, he like writes a 5-paragraph essay about, here are the 3 reasons why I need to marry you. Reason 1, it's his duty as a clergyman.
Yeah.
Reason 2, he believes it could afford him a great amount of happiness. And reason 3, his patroness says that he should.
My boss told me
Romantic.
to.
So romantic.
Plus, the dude says intercourse in the middle of a sermon, so like that's funny.
That was
Man.
hilarious. It's so funny. Everything about this. I mean, from the
His
cut
haircut
scene-
was funny.
Huh?
His haircut was funny.
His haircut was funny.
He
That
has an
scene when
amazing
they're
haircut,
at
yeah.
Rosings and it's Mr. Collins, Darcy, and then the other Fitzwilliam brother, and they're all just standing there in their various poses, statuesque as well, while Georgiana plays. That's hilarious. Judi Dench, hysterical.
Mhm.
When she
Mrs.
runs in the
Bennet
middle
is
of the night
funniest,
to like
is the funniest one in there. She is so funny. She is such a conniving mother. Got to pawn off all my daughters. Got to get them all married.
Oh, and she won't let Jane take the coach because she wants her to get wet in the rain and have to spend
Yeah.
the night.
Everybody
Serious
else
strategy.
is playing checkers. She is playing chess.
Yeah.
She knows this courtship game. Mother knows best, truly.
I think there are
And-
also some really good like just physical comedy bits too. Like there's a few different sequences, but like one in particular where they're dancing and having a conversation as they dance, but like every 30
It's one of
seconds
my favorite scenes.
the conversation has to break off as they like have another partner, and then the line dance like circles back around so they can finish their conversation.
But it's another one or two. So the camera is
Yeah.
like constantly following Lizzie as she like gravitates away from Darcy and then back to Darcy. And then like that sequence is followed by this kind of reality breaking moment where they are dancing alone in a room, and like my viewing of it today, I kind of just thought like, oh, did they like drift into another room without me noticing? But then it like cuts back to them like surrounded by all these people dancing. A really subtle touch that I think like goes a long way to kind of kind of elevate the emotional experience of watching the movie.
Joe Wright, he's a dummy, but he can direct.
Mm-hmm.
Grace, have you seen how many other Pride and Prejudice adaptations have you seen? Or is it just this one?
This one, and like I think a couple episodes of, or maybe like one episode of the Colin Firth one. That one is like much more. I mean, it's like they just, this chapter is this episode. This chapter is this episode. It is much more true to the novel.
Boring to me.
Not boring. I mean, they're very.
No, it is. Like you have to adapt it. For the screen is different than the page. You got to adapt it a little bit. You can't just pure like that. That's boring to me.
I mean, it's a great novel. It's hard to mess up.
Yeah.
That's just my feeling on any adaptation.
Right, because I mean, the source material is already so fabulous, but Joe Wright like singling in, and the writers like really like honing in on just Lizzie Darcy, and then a little bit of Charlotte and Mr. Collins, a little bit of Jane and Bingley, a little bit of Lydia and Wickham, like the other major romances that all sort of like foil each other, all these different sort of marriages, like a marriage of, security and stability between Charlotte and Mr. Collins, a hasty marriage of lust with Lydia and Wickham, a tender and sort of timid, likey love between Jane and Bingley, and then like the strong, stable love between Lizzie and Darcy, like all the different types of love and marriage or reasons to marry someone. So
also Mary's serious relationship with the piano. Yeah,
that's her one true love.
I liked Mary the most because they were just constantly like, Mary, get the fuck out of here.
I like the scene where she's playing piano at a ball and her dad comes up and tells her to stop playing piano.
He closes the piano. That's enough, darling.
And
like,
then later you intersect with her and you hear her say, "I hate balls."
Yeah.
Well, pianos don't have balls; they have keys. So good for you, girl. But
there's a lot of good piano moments. There's also where Elizabeth is forced to play piano, and she's like, "I'm not very good." And like, just play. She's actually okay. Like, I didn't actually notice her being that bad.
Yeah, she's messing up a little bit.
Oh,
Yeah.
that you're like Darcy. He didn't think that she was bad at all.
Well,
Just-
I guess like in the context of
She wasn't perfect.
like everybody is expected to know how to play piano, like it would sound
Well,
worse.
Every-
But like
yeah,
if
I mean, what
someone,
else are you supposed to do those days? You know, like
No,
yeah,
so
I guess
it's-
like I'm
it's-
thinking today, like
frolic and play piano.
It's supposed to speak to the ability, like there's that scene where they're at Netherfield, and it's Bingley and his bitchy sister and Darcy.
she is terrible.
She's the worst, but she's so good.
I
But
like the scene where they walk in the circle around the room.
they're walking in
Oh
the circle.
man, that
but
was
they're-
a good
before
one
that,
too.
they're discussing. Darcy says, "I have not yet met a woman, but for that she's accomplished," or something along those lines. Everybody says that every girl is so great and she's so accomplished and she's so wonderful, but I have really only met a small handful of accomplished women, and like the accomplishments that they're talking about are like the skills and abilities that parents then use to pawn off their daughters. She can speak another language, she can sing, she can play, or she can sew, she can embroider, these womanly arts that are then the commodities, if we're talking about commodification, skills, labor, and everything, that that's what these women bring to the table. And then what the men bring to the table is the money. So and what is Lizzie accomplished at? She likes to walk, she loves to read, and like that's such
And
an
he
idol.
mentions that. He says, like, I would like to have a woman who's like reading and helping me become more intelligent. And at that moment, you get like this close up on the book she's reading. She slams it shut, and the camera like pans up to her face really quick. So good.
I'm not reading. I don't want to be desirable to you. I don't want you to
Right.
think I'm desirable. But like her reading is such like an idle pastime that like that puts thoughts in a woman's head, and that's bad. We don't want that. So, what does she have to offer besides just her own inherent goodness that she knows that she has? She knows that she is a good judge of character. She's prejudiced.
But she's not a good.
Well,
judge
yeah,
of
she's
character.
not a
She's
good
not
judge.
a
of
good
character.
judge of
She's the
character.
one who needs to change over the course of the movie.
She
Yeah.
changes, Darcy changes, they change for each other.
It's
And
sweet.
it's so sweet. So
Yeah, it is interesting. So, like, one thing we haven't talked about is one of those reviews mentioned the context of this movie in 2005, and they mentioned like feminism having faded and everyone's courting now or something. I don't know. I'm wondering what that specifically is referring to. But in my mind, when I think of 2005 in the cinemas, like this, is like the height of like the ossification of the rom-com into like the quote unquote like chick flick or whatever, right? Like, where there's this like extremely rigid formula that all the rom-coms like follow. And every rom-com is about like, a woman who has like a job in publishing in a major metropolitan area, and like but like Pride and Prejudice is kind of the architect of a lot of those like
True.
things that became cliches. And
They
so
hate
this
each other
movie,
first,
they hate
grow
each
to
other
love
first and they
each
love each other. And like, I guess the only difference is like, Elizabeth's not like a career woman or whatever, but I don't know. It is interesting that this is when that adaptation was made, like in the context of like, I don't know, whatever, like The Wedding Planner or Failure to Launch or like those sorts of movies
You've
where
got mail.
How to Lose a Guy.
You've Got Mail, like I don't know, like it is an interesting.
To me, this feels like more part of the trend of like IP becoming the dominant force in the blockbuster landscape.
This
Like,
movie does.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that in a bad way, right? Like Jane
The
Austen
Austen
is better
multiverse.
IP than just about anything else.
I would
But
love that.
So you're talking about like that post Harry Potter, post Lord of the Rings of, we can actually do like adaptations of revered novels now, sort of
like
thing.
I'm looking at the
Dracula
2005
Untold.
page on Letterboxd, and a lot of the biggest movies I'm seeing are adaptations.
Yeah.
Batman Begins,
With
Harry
an
Potter, Star Wars Episode 3, Charlie and Chocolate Factory, V for Vendetta, Narnia, King Kong.
Yeah, but Pride and Prejudice has been adapted like for so long. Like it's not like that's like a new thing. In like, I don't know. I don't feel like Pride and Prejudice is in conversation with those movies, except in.
I'm just saying it's like familiar intellectual property.
Oh,
that
yeah,
people
maybe.
are going to like have their favorite story told to them again.
That could be. I mean,
But
that's
this
I
was
mean
done
that,
so
that's an
much
argument
better than
for
all
like
those characters that I listed, honestly.
That's an argument for a lot of like genre staples, right? I mean, it wasn't like, one of the main, like the big, like, if you were going to critique like the rom-com, like it was like, oh, they're formulaic and we always know how they're going to go or whatever. But like, then like that's part of the appeal too, is that like the formula has like, there's a comfort in like knowing what you're going to get. I don't know, like there's something to that, and there's also something to the fact of like what you're talking about, Grace, that this became a comfort watch for so many people. Like I've watched this movie multiple times. I know my wife has this movie basically memorized, and I don't know, like I don't really know where I'm going with this, but like there is something that feels of its era besides just the actors being there of this movie, that I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on Pride and Prejudice before we wrap up?
It is a truth universally acknowledged that this is the best adaptation, and it has bewitched me, body and soul, and I love, love it.
That's good.
So,
Couple thoughts. One, as I'm thinking about Mr. Darcy being played by the same actor who plays Tom Wamsgans, the mutton chops make a big difference. I think that really changes his vibe. Also, the last scene of this movie, I think, is the only thing that's not taken from Austen. And
is that where they're like sitting on the porch talking about each other?
Porch is one word for it.
Well, I don't know what it is. What do you call that? A vestibule?
The veranda. Yeah.
Veranda.
Yeah, that scene feels a little weird and awkward to me.
That is the that's the formulaic rom-com of them together. Instead of ending in their wedding, like the union, and then like months later, like that to me is the like kind of formulaic, but it is kind of gooey and it is really sweet though.
Well, because like, marriage as a conceit is no longer like marriage in and of like that ceremony is no longer like the end goal, like culturally. It's like what Pride and Prejudice presents, and like what a lot of rom-coms present, is that marriage is the gateway toward like, happiness and love. And so like, rather than end on the marriage, which is kind of like the late 18th century, like happy ending, you end on the 2000s happy ending of like, you're married to your best friend.
Right. I think it's just like the dialogue is not Jane Austen caliber dialogue. And so it's
I guess it's not taking direct quotes from the book anymore.
Also, is Gerwig's Little Women in conversation with this movie aesthetically at all?
Oh, I bet you. I think so. I mean, I think like
Bob Odenkirk doesn't show up in this movie, so
that's true. He doesn't say
"There's my Pride and Prejudice."
I do think the music, and some of the like what we were talking about, establishment of geography of like a home and all that, I think it does place it aesthetically. I mean, there's no way Greta Gerwig didn't watch this movie,
surely,
as a young 20-something or whatever she was doing in 2005.
And she's doing
was she doing Noah Baumbach in 2020?
I don't think she had not hit Noah Baumbach. Yeah, she was doing like Funny Haha or something.
Francis.
No, Funny.
I think that's a real movie, right?
Mm-hmm. It is. Yeah.
You can just throw nouns together. It's a mumblecore movie.
Yeah.
Computer chess.
I will say that the only other thought that I have to give is more of an anecdote, but I was listening to a podcast where Alex Ross Perry, the director, was on it, and he mentioned that he had recently, over the past few years, gotten into Jane Austen, and his approach to Jane Austen was he read one novel a year, and when he read the novel, he then would watch all of the adaptations of them, which it sounds really grueling, to be honest. And he said that it was really interesting to see the difference between the like Colin Firth Pride and Prejudice, which like went out of its way to include every single detail from the book, to this movie, which was much more like had much more editorial choices in terms of like what to include and what not to include. And that in itself became like an interesting thing of watching all the adaptations is what remains the same in all of the movies and what scenes have to stay and what scenes get cut or like, changed. Anyway, so that's Alex Ross Perry's insights into this whole topic.
Well, thanks, Alex Ross Perry, for
Does he want to come on for
for
part
dropping
two?
some thoughts in.
He
For
probably
Cinematary.
would.
Yeah, let's get him.
Um,
Call him up. Does he
well,
have an agent?
I'm sure he has an agent.
Hmm.
All right, well, I'll wrap up this episode of Cinematary. If you'd like to find more about us, head over to Facebook at facebook.com/Cinematary, on Twitter or Instagram at handle @Cinematary, or go to Letterboxd, letterboxd.com/Cinematary, where before all these other companies and film distributors and crap like had Letterboxd accounts, we were there first.
We were there before Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, we were there before Martin Scorsese. Letterboxd.com/Cinematary.
We go way back. We interviewed the CEO.
Yeah, so suck on that, movie. And if you'd like to, at some point make us watch something, support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Cinematary. You can give us $1, you can give us $5, you can give us $600, you can give us your land and property, and we'll give you our daughter. We'll give you our daughter that you can marry. Whatever you want to do.
Michael does have a daughter he could give you.
Grace has some daughters, right?
I do. I have 2 beautiful daughters. If anyone would like their paws in marriage.
Exactly.
They're cats.
So thank you to our
My
patrons.
daughter's 2, so
this is an arranged marriage, well in advance.
It's like a Twilight imprinted on thing, so it's fine.
Back to Robert Pattinson.
That's right.
Yeah.
That was not Robert Pattinson that imprinted though.
Well, no, but Twilight.
It's true.
Well, wait, let me thank our patrons before, so that
Thank you,
they feel loved. Cam, Candace Sisson, Ron Hayes, Teresa Marsathi, and Tyler Chandler. I almost said my own name, Zach Dennis. I fucking patronize this man, Zach Dennis. I pay for shit.
Special shout out to Candace. Thank you for picking this movie for us.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it was really nice to rewatch it.
Special shout out to Tyler for making us watch The Core last week. So whatever, y'all.
The 2 genders.
Yeah, no, good Patreon picks. I like, they were fun. And it wasn't Andrew's students fucking with us, which is great.
Yeah, what's your Pride and Prejudice? Make us watch it next year.
God,
listener.
Well, we're gonna next episode we'll be going over the definitive 10 best movies of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So
no question.
Will we on the podcast like the movies that get?
We like the movies? It's up in the air. We don't know. It's just it shows that democracy is a flawed, probably archaic system. So we'll get into that, and then we'll have some fun news on future series for the next year. So until then, thank you for listening, and we will see you in the new year. 2024, baby.